Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is Kid the Bloody Elbow, joined by Connor Rubish and Zane Simon for the MMA Vivisection UFC Fight Night Manila. Uriah Faber, Frankie Edgar, a destined match, one of the great fantasy matches of all time. Fans are in a lather worldwide. We cannot wait. Okay, so it's a pretty good fight night, fight morning, whatever. It's on Fox Sports 1 Saturday morning. Frankie Edgar, Uriah Faber, a bunch of other guys, lots of Asians. Should be fun. General thoughts on the card, Connor.
Um, yeah. I mean, action-wise, it'll probably turn out to be
Your cat
comparable.
wants to see it. Your cat can't stay out of the action.
That's your recommendation right there. Action-wise, it's probably about as promising as last week's card, which turned out to be pretty fun. Like there are probably some fights that are sloppy but entertaining. There are a couple of interesting prospects mixed in there, but it's not a great card. I mean, the saving grace is this Fight Pass?
No,
No.
two fights are Fight Pass. The rest is Fox Sports 1.
Either way, saving grace Saturday morning is still in its favor. The fact that it's not going to take up your precious Saturday night. You can watch this while you're like eating brunch or something, whatever, fancy
Or in
white
my
collar.
case, 4 in the morning.
What's that?
In my case, 4 in the morning.
Yeah, okay. But
Yeah.
it's not good. But there's some stuff worth watching for a morning card. There's stuff worth watching.
The main card, by the time the main card gets interesting, it'll be decent hours
Yeah.
most of the United States. So,
Yeah.
there's that. So, Zane, your thoughts on the card?
It sucks. I mean, like the main card is actually pretty fun. I'm mildly interested in most of it. Really interested in a couple of the fights, but the undercard, I gotta admit, even me personally, I cannot get any excitement going for the undercard, and I'm a person who's excited about almost everything fight-wise.
Yeah, I think this speaks to the lack of prospects in MMA in Asia right now, and also the fact that the UFC is competing with ONE FC for that same shallow pool and not necessarily getting the biggest fish.
Well, they're not even really competing for it anymore. I mean, I think that that's a market that, like, they might be looking for guys in Southeast Asia here and there, but especially like the tough China thing, that just ended up being a dry hole. Like, I think they're not even interested at this point.
Yeah, there's no talent, and they can't get into the market, so, what are you going to do? China might be one of those countries like Turkey or Iran that's got lots of combat sports, India too, tons of combat sports heritage, tons of talented athletes, no MMA scene to speak of, so what are you going to do? But let's dive right on into it. First up, we've got two flyweight bouts opening the UFC Fight Pass portion of the card. For those of you who are just completely insane, 4 a.m. on the West Coast, 6 a.m. Central Time, 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Get up on first thing in the morning, watch some flyweight fights on Fight Pass. Flyweight Nolan Tickman and Yao Shiki. Let's make this quick. Connor, do you have a pick? Any thoughts on these guys?
I've got to go with Tickman just by virtue of the fact that he's a King's MMA fighter. That's really what it comes down to. I think he's also a little more well-rounded, so that's the pick.
See, and Zane?
Yeah, Jiqui lost to Royston Wee, and he didn't lose. He won that fight, but he was still like close enough that the judges didn't give it to him. That's pretty much all you need to know. Nolan Tickman's actually a decent physical talent. He just doesn't have a lot of technical skills yet, so he should win this.
I see, and the odds makers agree. They've got Nolan Tickman favored anywhere from minus 218 all the way up to minus 240. Ziku Yao is the underdog, plus 180 up to plus 201. That brings us to our second flyweight bout, John De Los Reyes versus Roldan Sangcha'an. Zane.
This is a fight that De Los Reyes really should win. I think he kind of has to. His back's against the wall after a couple of losses to Kyoji Horiguchi and Dustin Kimura. But De Los Reyes has a lot of physical talent, and he has at least one very good technical skill in his boxing, and it's just not quite transferred into wins yet. But I don't think Sangcha'an is really ready for general high-level MMA. De Los Reyes at least seems like he's got the potential tools to be a great fighter, a great action fighter for the UFC.
And Connor?
Yeah, I've got to agree. De Los Reyes, it looks bad coming in with 2 losses, but you have to take the quality of fighters that gave him those losses into account, and both Dustin Kimura and Kyoji Horiguchi are obviously very good fighters. So, yeah, this should be a fun fight. At the very least, these two guys like to bang.
Is
And
it
they're not.
4 a.m. fun?
No, it's not. It's
Unless you're just up all night anyway.
if you're one of our British fans, it's probably definitely worth like a nice early afternoon viewing.
Yeah, it's definitely like 1 p.m. fun.
I'd even call it 11 a.m. fun. You'd be like, I'm going to get up a little earlier than I need to, have some coffee.
11 a.m. fun.
11 a.m. I wish I could sleep till 11 a.m.
That's early. You missed the part where he said that.
Yeah,
That's
I know. You get up a little earlier than usual. What a bum. These kids.
I get up at 6:30 on weekdays. I deserve to sleep until noon on Saturday. God damn it.
I see. Well, enjoy it while it lasts, because it won't last forever, in all likelihood, unless you become a degenerate, lifelong.
The only thing more depressing than that whole string of sentences was this card.
It could be. We'll have to see. This could be the most fun we've ever had. Probably won't be. The odds makers, they like Reyes too. They've got him favored -170 all the way up to -200. Sung Cha An is underdog +140 all the way up to +164. That brings us to the first fight, the Fox Sports 1 card. Ning Guangyao versus Royston Wee. This is a bantamweight fight, and boy, are the fans excited about this one. Zane, share the love.
This is like the worst possible sort of output of the Tough China experiment, which is that you have two Chinese grinding fighters that nobody knows or cares about. I mean, Guang Yu won the Ultimate Fighter China, and I don't think you could ask any single person who's not a hardcore MMA fan to identify even him by name. Like, oh, who's this guy? What did he do? Nobody would know. And Royston Wee has just been like the UFC's charity case, where it feels like they're just throwing bad fighters at him and getting him wins to build a name. And now you have two guys. I don't know. It's flip a coin. Guang Yu should win because Wee is just not good, but whatever. I can't care.
I see. I heard that the Chinese government was just sending Royston Wee over here to intimidate the Philippines into giving up some of their island holdings that are under dispute. So that's how dangerous the man is. He's frightening entire fleets of the Philippine Navy. All right, Connor, your pick.
Royston Wee is everyone's favorite ironic fighter because, I don't know, there's just something about him that's just as unremarkable as you could possibly get. He's not even the worst fighter on the roster. He's just completely unremarkable. I'm going to pick Wee to win this fight. I think the fact that the UFC has given up on the Chinese market is evident when you consider that they're still giving Wee soft touches, and yet they're matching Zhang Lipeng, who we're going to see later on the card. They're matching him pretty tough, and he actually is a decent fighter. So he's certainly better than Royston Wee. But I'm going to pick Wee to win. It's two guys who are similar. It's going to be a boring fight. You should skip the prelims just because it means there might be a chance you might catch some part of this fight. It's not going to be fun. So
I see. So this is like 5 p.m. fun?
This is no kind of fun.
No fun. This isn't even like you're at your desk at work sneaking some fun? No?
No.
Okay. All right. So it's TPS reports are better than this fight. That's,
I was just about to say TPS reports.
The odds makers have they've got Guangyao slightly favored, actually -109 all the way up to -125, and Wee is the dog, but still in the negative territory, -101 all the way up to -120. So it's kind of a wash. Different odds makers have different odds. And that brings us to Diego Lima versus Li Ji Lang and a welterweight bout. And Connor, you can go first on this one.
Man, Diego Lima has been pretty much a gigantic letdown since his coming into the UFC. I think everyone kind of knew he had some holes to shore up, but they have definitely been exposed and widened since he made his promotional debut. I think Lee's actually probably the kind of fighter to give a guy like Lima trouble. If and when it goes to the ground, that's obviously Lima's best shot, as it usually is. The thing is Lee is a pretty aggressive striker. He throws decent combinations, and that's the kind of guy that Diego Lima inexplicably decides to trade with. He just, his only solution to people throwing at him a lot is to try and throw as much at them and then get hit in the process. So I'm actually going to go with Lee.
And Zane, your pick?
Yeah, I mean, this is a fight that Lima has to win, and I don't really know if he's the kind of guy I trust with his back against the wall. Like, he seems more like the kind of guy who's going to crumble under pressure than the kind of guy who's going to excel under it.
More to the point, I've seen him lose with his back to the wall several
Yeah,
times.
yeah, even that. And Jinglong, I mean, he came into the UFC known as a really good aggressive grappler. Like that was what he did, and he was really a clingy sort of just wrap up onto you and stay on you grappler. And I would expect that then I think Lima's the more dangerous grappler, but that might mean that Lima can't submit him, and if he can't submit him, then I don't know if he can win the fight. So I kind of want to pick Li Jinglong too, just because I can't trust Diego Lima at all to win fights.
Well, this might be the one to put your mom's car on because Diego Lima is slightly favored, minus 170 all the way up to minus 210. I think it's time to get that title out of her glove box and put this one. Don't take gambling advice or investment advice from the show. Diego Lima is the underdog, plus 140 all the way up to plus 160. And man, this card is no fun. We're right on to Cajun Johnson versus Li Ping Zhang, and this is a lightweight bout. Zane, you can go first.
Uh, God, this is another fight where it's just I couldn't care less. Li Ping Zhang is a pretty decent fighter, but he's really kind of like a very good uh, physical specimen of a fighter who has yet to quite figure out how to fight really well. He's not a great kickboxer yet. He's not a great wrestler. He's not a great grappler. Everything's just kind of coming up at the same time to try and match that. And Cajun Johnson's just one of those guys who seems to have a bunch of dynamic skills, none of which really translate into a style. He's the kind of guy who throws out a lot of weird stuff or wild stuff, or will just get in a firefight and look good for a round and a half and then just get clocked and knocked out and be done. And I mean, this is a fight Li Peng I think should win. He should be a pretty powerful lightweight. And Johnson's just kind of like Lima. He's not a fighter I would trust to win. Even on the regional scene, he's been really hit and miss. And that isn't something that's getting better as he climbs into the higher levels of the UFC at all.
If you can call this the higher levels of the UFC.
Well, the UFC being a higher level than regional MMA, it's not doing him any favors.
Fair enough. And Connor, your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually, this is where I start to actually care about this card in terms of name value. I think this is a matchup that, I guess it kind of makes sense if they're trying to. Obviously, there's more potential in Cajun Johnson having been on a recent season of Tough and being a Canadian export. There's more potential for him to bring in viewers than there is Zhang Li Peng, so I guess they're just sacrificing Li Peng to Cajun Johnson. I don't know that Johnson's actually a gimme to win this fight. Like I said, Li Peng's pretty solid if like inconsistent. He doesn't seem to have like those tools to really decisively win a fight. He just doesn't seem to have that any kind of fight-ending potential. But he goes in there and he puts in good, consistent performances where he's like, from first bell to last, he is trying to do a thing that will help him win. He just doesn't. He's not going to get anybody out of there, and so he's not dominant enough to make that kind of grinding game plan work. Yeah, I mean, really, Johnson's biggest thing is Johnson's kind of holy everywhere. It's not just the chin; it's kind of like the grappling. Like everything's like dynamic but full of defensive flaws. So it is quite possible that Li Peng could grab a submission, could even knock him out. Like I know that sounds crazy, but Zhang Li Peng has enough power to knock Cajun Johnson out because he's just got a very, very iffy chin. But he's been hit by harder hitters and come back before. He's certainly gritty, Cajun Johnson. I got to pick Johnson to win. But it's not a bad fight. I don't think it's a bad fight at all. It's an interesting matchup.
It does sound like a recipe for action. The odds makers like Johnson too. They've got him favored at minus 130 up to minus 140. Li Ping Zhang is the underdog at plus 100 all the way up to plus 118. And that brings us to John Tuck versus Tai Hyung Bang. And this is a lightweight fight and the final fight on the preliminary card. Connor, you go first.
These are two very similar fighters, but I think that John Tuck is probably a little further along than Tai Hyun Bang. Both guys who are very physically strong, both in terms of like grappling exchanges and in terms of swinging explosive power shots. Bong, I think, shocked a lot of people when he beat Cajun Johnson in his last fight. That was Tai Hyun Bong, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And he was getting hit a little in that fight, and that's Johnson's not a terrible offensive fighter, so that kind of makes sense. But he stuck in there, he stayed in the pocket, and he was dropping a guy who, while not difficult to hurt or drop, is not a bad fighter either. So it was definitely a surprise, and he had a pretty good performance. I oh man, these fights are hard to pick, man. I'm gonna go with John Tuck. I think that John Tuck's just got more UFC experience. I think who was John Tuck's last fight?
Kevin Lee.
Kevin Lee, and he okay, yeah, and he lost to Kevin Lee. And what was before that? The Jake Lindsay fight. I actually think John Tuck's been looking a little better lately. I used to be pretty down on him. Didn't think he was very impressive. Like he was just physicality. I think he's coming along a little bit. So it's a tough call. I'm gonna pick John Tuck. It's whatever.
And Zane, what's your pick?
I'm going to go with Tai Hun Bang. I think the biggest thing I've seen out of John Tuck so far in the UFC is that he is not a physically competitive lightweight. He has some good technique and some decent kickboxing from the outside and even some all right power when he can get everything going. But he's not great at maintaining range, and when he gets inside, he's just not strong enough to compete there. And Tai Hun Bang is kind of a fire plug. Like he's a really powerfully built fighter who really uses his power game well, and I don't think Tuck can match that. I think it's just going to be one of those things where Tuck might look good in small bursts, but every time he hooks up with Bong's just going to throw him around. So I'm going to take Tai Hun Bang.
All right, and the odds makers, they like themselves a little bit of Tai Young. No, they like John Tuck too. Now we've got some controversy here. Might be one to bet the farm on.
Me and Zane are at each other's throats.
That's
Oh,
right.
dear
That's
God.
right. The odds are moving around. People are watching the show. The money is flying. I can't keep up with it. So John Tuck's favored minus 145 all the way up to minus 160. And Tai Young Bang is the underdog at plus 115 up to plus 138. That brings us to the main card. Levan Makashvili versus Mark Edeva, the famous, infamous Georgia versus the Philippines rivalry, one of international sports. Yeah. Anyway, Connor, what are your thoughts on this one?
This is a good fight.
Yeah.
I think this is a very interesting matchup. Makashvili obviously has. Well, I'll talk about. My God, dude, my brain is dying. I'm going to talk about Edeva first. Edeva, I think what this one comes down to is finishing potential. There's a disparity in defense between these two guys, so I think Edeva's probably a little more hittable. Edeva's tough though; he's not exactly easy to put away. I think what it really comes down to is finishing potential, and Edeva is not a guy who really seems to have a consistent path to a knockout. For a guy who likes to strike, he's not one who seems to have a lot of threat when he's fighting. He likes the attritive game plan, basically. He likes the low kicks. He lands a good left hook, but he doesn't exactly blow people away with it. He's a good fighter, and I like Edeva's style a lot. But against a guy who is a finisher, like when he fought Kevin Souza, that's what it ends up looking like. Against a guy who can really just throw with abandon and trust in his power, it tends to fall to pieces a little bit. And I kind of think that's the type of guy he's facing in Levan Makashvili. I think Makashvili is a guy who can throw with serious heat. He's improved in terms of volume, which would have been perhaps Edeva's path to victory in the past against, if Makashvili was a low output fighter, but he's not quite a low output fighter anymore. He's just as well-rounded as Edeva with more potential for ending the fight at any moment, so I have to go with Levan Makashvili.
And Zane?
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference here is that you have a potential fun action fighter in Mark Edeva, somebody who's evolving a game that can always be exciting and get fans watching, and then you have a potential top 10, top 5 fighter in Levan Makashvili, somebody who can potentially contend for a title one day, who's got great wrestling, strong grappling, and a really good, solid developing kickboxing game.
I just
And
have to add, for our viewers who are new to the show, when Zane's talking about a guy who's making his UFC debut, divide by the square root of hype. Okay, go on.
whatever. I'm
Well,
excited for him. I think he's fun.
I think he is too, but sometimes these guys hit the octagon and Zane's dreams, poof, go up in smoke.
Heavyweight's a weird division. Most of the other guys I'm excited about do well.
You have good, you know better than I. I'm just saying, just saying, just saying. Grain of salt, that's all.
take your grain of salt with a grain of salt. That's what I would say.
That's always wise, and then grind it up and snort it. But no.
Anyway,
Never mind.
I just think that Levan Makashvili is the better fighter, and he should, but they're not. It's not like Edva has a great experience advantage or anything like that. So there's nothing really that I would put in Edva's favor other than that he's a little more of an unorthodox kickboxer, and that might throw Makashvili off.
Is he a wushu guy, Edeva?
Yeah.
Yeah. So always kind of fun to see what those guys are cooking up. That's the Chinese kung fu style. So, but Makashvili, the odds makers are with Zane here. They've got him heavily favored for a UFC rookie, minus 350 all the way up to minus 400. Mark Edeva is the underdog at plus 275 all the way up to plus 336. And that brings us to another man Dana White once called the Anderson Silva of the lightweight division, Philippe Novaire and Hui Chu Nam. And what are they still in the lightweights? No, they're now down to featherweight. So, Connor, is Novaire got another? Is he going to come back? Anderson Silva was once in the wilderness, and then became the Anderson Silva of no. Go on.
I'm going to beg Zane to take this one first because I don't care. Zane?
All right. Yeah. I don't know about Nover at this point. I have no idea what he really has. Every time he's taken a step up in competition in the past 5 years, he's lost.
Yeah.
So how you then turn around and say, oh, he's going to do great now with this step up in competition because he won 3 fights in a row against guys that nobody knows is, I don't necessarily see it. Yuchil Nam is on the other side. He's actually pretty good. He's had some rough going early when he lost to Dave Jansen and a couple other fights where, he's maybe lost split decisions and things like that. But he has a pretty solid style. He's another, kind of like Taehyun Bong, he's another one of these little kind of brick house Korean fighters that really fights with a lot of physicality, and now dropping to featherweight, I think that's going to be a big thing for him, and he's a more consistent performer by far, so I get to take him here.
Nate, did Dana White actually call Philippe Novaire the Anderson Silva of the lightweight division?
Repeatedly, yes.
Yep.
Under what context? What prompted it?
He was hyping the Ultimate Fighter show.
Yeah, he made
okay.
it to the finale of Tough against Efrain Escudero, and
who's gone on to anyway.
It's the Rose Namajunas factor. Think of it like that.
That means nothing to anyone.
Well, no, that means something to me.
I mean, maybe like to extreme hardcores, but
I know, but I'm talking to Connor. I'm not talking to.
But we've got 14 viewers here who are going, "What the fuck?"
Dana made a similar comparison by calling Rose the new Ronda Rousey, which she's not.
Yeah. And it was all the hype, the Tough season, and her getting in there with Carla Esparza. And if you'd actually watched any of their career prior to Tough, you would know exactly what a Carla Esparza Rose Namajunas fight is going to look like.
I think that was kind of the last straw in terms of people buying into the hype of Ultimate Fighter seasons, because before that, I mean, Uriah Hall is surely dominating the middleweight division by this point.
He is tearing it to pieces.
He's up against Weidman next. Again. I guess I agree with Zane. I'm sorry. I don't care about Philippe Novaire's fight. This just like kills all my momentum and interest in the main card to have this fight just stuck in the middle of it for some reason.
He's Filipino. That's the thinking.
Okay, and I guess Yui Chul Nam is Korean, so they're gonna just put
The home
Anybody
team is gonna, yeah, they're gonna. I mean, they're giving Nam a chance to get over on the hometown kid. I
Is it
think.
kind of like weirdly insensitive that the UFC is like, we have some people who look Asian, like throw them on the card, like
Well, I think it's also logistics. Like these guys
Yeah.
live and train in South Korea, so
that
it's
makes sense. That
a
makes
lot
sense.
closer to go to Manila than it is, or Australia. I mean, they've got an entire hemisphere over here they're trying to cover, and they haven't been back to Abu Dhabi in a while, and
So then they throw the Filipino guy in Manila against a guy who is almost certainly going to beat him.
Yep.
well, there's some other yeah, and they're going to be doing it again and again too.
Yep.
They
So,
do this stuff all the time. They're always like, we have somebody, let's match them really tough on their home turf.
well, there's a sadistic element there, and Sean Shelby and Joe Silva like to indulge in. But I mean, it's at least they didn't resurrect Brandon Vera's ghost to come back and. But I've got Mark Munoz, the shade of Mark Munoz here in a couple fights, so that's going to be depressing enough. Anyway, Philippe Nover's the underdog. Nover plus 135 all the way up to plus 155. Yui Chu Nam is the underdog at minus 165 all the way up to minus 185, minus 190 even. And that brings us to Hyun-Gyu A. Slim against Neil Magny. Now this is a fun fight. Connor,
Yes.
does this get you tickled?
This one, I am just tickled all over right now. This is a solid fight, and it's a really interesting one, actually. I think I was calling for more of a step up in terms of accomplishments for Neil Magny after his last fight, but in retrospect, I'm really happy with the choice that they made for him. I think this is a dangerous opponent who's not quite as proven. This is kind of like that last leg that if Neil Magny can beat A. Slim, then he's going to move up into top 10 competition.
He's
And
got
I
a
think-
6-fight win streak in the UFC, which is no joke.
It's not, and they haven't been against amazing fighters, but he's beaten good fighters, and he's looked good against them and looked progressively better against each of them. He's really coming to his own, and I think with a guy like Neil Magny, who has really promising potential, he's turned into a really well-rounded fighter and a more dangerous one than most of us expected. He's turned into a better finisher than we expected. I think it's a good idea to let somebody like that build his confidence, give him, not just soft touches, but strategically match him. And so this is like the final step, I think, because A. Slim has given tough fights to top 10 fighters before, guys who are at the top of their division. And it's basically going to be a test of Neil Magny's ability to box from the outside and keep a slugger at bay. And I think he'll be able to do it, but it is a dangerous matchup for him because Lim is... and Lim has more than just power. He's not a terrible fighter. Like he knows where to put himself. He's hard. He's very tough and he's gritty and he picks up on cues and openings. He's not just a guy who just swings mindless bombs. He is a guy who relies too much on that to consistently beat top fighters. But that threat is there. So I'm going to go with Magny. And Lim is huge, man. Magny's a big lightweight, but Lim is just a powerhouse. Like he is built like a clock tower. So I'm gonna go Magny, but I can't be confident that Magny could even out-grapple Lim if it comes down to it, just because of the size disparity. So tough one. Zane, what do you think?
This was a fun one, and don't do the transitions. You're stealing my job for a second Office Space reference. I take the specs from the engineers and bring them to the customer, or vice versa. Come on.
You're a people person, Nate.
That's right.
God damn it.
God damn it.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. I'm but I'm working my jump to conclusions game, so it ought to be great. Zane,
Moot.
re-engage.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Now,
You guys-
I had a whole
Anyway.
segue about A. Slim throwing smart bombs, and you just.
Oh, please
so-
use it. Please
No,
use it.
it's too late.
Never
You
throw
said
it.
he doesn't throw dumb bombs; he throws smart bombs. So, can Neil
Oh.
Magny get past the smart bombs of A. Slim? That's the question, Zane.
God, that was so worth it.
I'll never pass you up again because I know now what I've lost.
Exactly.
Anyway, I gotta agree with Connor. This is a really awesome fight, and it's a close fight. I think the big thing for me is that, I mean, in one sense, you have a guy in Magny who maybe doesn't have the physical tools to be a championship caliber fighter, but who has a lot of the technical game that he's building to be a really tough fighter in the division. On the other side,
Would you compare him to Jim Miller?
I compare him to Michael Bisping over and over. That's easy. Always my easy comparison for Neil Magny is Michael Bisping.
You really think he's that much of a kickboxing? I mean, I think of Bisping is basically a kickboxer with pretty good grappling, but I don't know. I see
That's
Magny
pretty
more as
much
a
Magny's
grappler
dream
first.
is kickboxing, and then he has the only problem I have with Magny is that unlike Bisping, who had the sort of thing for like really nicely set up takedowns where he would just dump somebody and then get back to his feet and go back to kickboxing. Magny has a problem where he will over engage in wrestling and grappling when he clearly has an advantage on the feet. Like there's this push to show that he's a better fighter everywhere than his opponent, and that's gotten him in some real trouble against some really not very good fighters. I mean, most notably, it cost him a round against Rodrigo de Lima that he never should have lost whatsoever. But it's also something that caused he cost him some time against Kichi Kunamoto and Alex Garcia in fights where he was doing really well, and then he would just like hook up on the ground and get into these prolonged scrambles that didn't really do him any favors.
He has, however, I mean, he's got really good ground striking. I think that we've
Yeah, he
seen that
does.
his top control game is a lot better than we expected because of that.
Yeah, he does have some skill there when he gets the position he wants.
Yeah.
It's just that he doesn't always get the position he wants. Um, but Lim does have the physical talent to be a championship caliber fighter. It's just that he's a bit too late in his career probably to develop a lot more than he already is for talent. Like he's been fighting since 2006, a lot, which is why he's not like just a complete technical wash and not a complete brawler. But it's kind of sad because it is somebody you look at him and you're like, man, this guy could have been a surefire title contender had he been with a better camp earlier in his career and developing more. And so it's a tough fight to call because of that, because Lim is such a highlight reel athlete. And Magny has the tendency to let guys hang around and not just work his game and do what he can dominate in. And especially, I mean, and even if he does keep it at range, I don't know that that's best for him because Lim is so good at exploding from the edge into the pocket and then getting back out. So it's a tough fight to call. I think Magny's the safe pick because he is a much more consistent performer. But I don't know. I like the only guy Lim's lost to recently is Tarek Safadine, and that was a hell of a fight. I mean, we saw how
Against
tough
a much
Lim is.
better kickboxer.
Yeah, against a much better kickboxer, and we saw how tough Lim is in that fight, and how
He still put Safadine on skates in the last round.
Yeah. And Magny's never been knocked out. To me, this is a fascinating fight because Magny's a guy. He's basically like he's like a baseball team with a really good pitching staff and no home run hitters. He hits some singles, he hits some doubles. He's looking to win 2-1, 3-1, get out of there. Slim is looking to paste your ass. I mean, he's looking to take your head right off your shoulders. He's got 3 TKOs in the UFC. A really fun fight between a guy who's not all offense, but a ton of offense against a guy who's a lot of discipline and a lot of domination, but who can't take his eye off the ball for 1 second, or Slim's going to knock his head off. So this one is fun.
Yeah,
I think Magny has improved in terms of finishing potential. I think we're going to see a couple things from Magny. I think like Donald Cerrone, he's going to grow into his frame kind of late, being such a tall, lanky guy. Whereas like Cerrone, people say, oh, his experience, blah blah blah. Cerrone is just a lot. Like Cerrone's thicker than he used to be a couple years ago, and it's really helped him to add that physical strength. He's got old man strength now, and I think Neil Magny's building up to that. I mean, if we look at Neil Magny's start in the UFC, it's like 2 decisions. He loses one, he loses a couple, then 2 more decisions. But now his last 4, he's finished 3 of his last 4 fights against decent opposition. So I agree with Zane. He gets himself in weird spots. It's like he's proving his well-roundedness sometimes. But I also think the fact that he's been able to do that successfully because he's been matched so well, it may actually mean he comes into fights like this, like each progressively tougher opponent that he beats, his confidence is just going to soar. Because I think in the past, Neil Magny's big problem was lack of confidence. Like he kind of just felt like he was going to lose when the opponent started to give him trouble. And now he's shown that he can fight through some tough spots and close fights and turned into a pretty dangerous guy. His ground striking, his submissions, his striking on the feet is more venomous than it used to be. It's hard to imagine that he'll knock out Lim, but I think he's got more sting on his punches than we probably think he does.
I think I'm gonna go with Magny here, just because I think he can implement. Like, I think this is one of the few places where him shooting some takedowns and sort of like pushing a more complicated game on Lim will actually pay off for him, because Lim is not really a well-rounded fighter that we've seen in any way. But that's it. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's a tough fight for me because I love watching Hyung Yu Lim. He's one of those like sort of cult favorite fighters for me, and I would love to see him light Neil Magny up with something that was just like highlight reel worthy.
I've given up on my hate for Neil Magny. I don't think he's as boring as I thought he was at first in the UFC, but a big mark for Ace Lim. I'd love to see Ace Lim in Strikeforce in the old days with Scott Coker. I think a lot more could be done with him promotionally than what they're doing. But nonetheless, this is a very fun fight. I'd say this is 8:30 a.m. fun right here.
I agree.
Yeah.
Is it just because of the rest of the card that this one seems so damn interesting? Is that why?
It might be.
Yeah.
It might be.
It's Lim though. I mean, Lim is fun to watch. You know, when he fights, you're gonna watch
Magny.
it.
Like, I have serious investment in Magny's story and his continued rise. Like, I think that's why it's good to match him, give him a lot of wins. You feel like he's got momentum, and you know Lim is fun.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, this is a good fight.
Yep, and the odds makers, they like Magny. They've got him favored -20 all the way up to -120 all the way up to -135. Hyung Yu Ace Lim is the underdog, but not by much. Plus, all the way down to -105 up to +109. And that brings us to a fight that gives me a sad. I has a sad about Luke Barnett versus Mark Munoz. Munoz has already said he's going to retire. I think he's just doing the UFC a favor. He's an American fighter of Filipino descent. They needed somebody Filipino close to the top of the card. And here he is, on his way out, has not looked like himself in the last few fights. There have been talk about steroids, blah, 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 but I think it's just chin and age. And a bummer because he's a really good guy. And Luke Barnett is not a whirling ball of knives, though. I don't see him just annihilating Mark Munoz, but I'm kind of afraid of what's going to happen. Make me feel better, Zane, please.
I think what we're actually going to see is Luke Barnett just annihilate Mark Munoz, and that's going to be the sad thing. Is like a fighter who shouldn't be annihilating Mark Munoz is just going to roll through him like it was nothing.
At least it won't be a killer like Smiling Sam Alvey, though, right?
God. But yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where and the reason I'm not interested in this fight is because I think Barnett has been, I don't know, he seems like a fighter that is suddenly, and it may have a long-term payoff to the benefit of him, but it seems like he's regressing in the quest to become a more technical fighter. It seems like that's actually taking away from all the parts of his game that actually work in the UFC. And so watching him roll through Mark Munoz isn't going to be like a really great thing for me where it's like, oh, but, Barnett's going places. It's like, well, maybe he is if everything really actually gels somewhere down the line. But recently he's just been kind of an ugly, awkward fighter who can't seem to make any part of his game function anymore. So I'm taking Barnett. I think he'll probably knock Munoz out early, but it's not going to be something
I mean, from in defense of Joe Silva, he had to book Munoz against somebody who's also on not a hot streak. I mean, Munoz has lost 4 out of his last 5, 3 straight, pretty brutally. Barnett's lost 2 straight, so at least they're both guys that are in a hole, and it's not just,
If it had been like Clint Hester or somebody like that, then I would be like, I'm actually kind of excited to see where Clint Hester goes. Like, what builds out of that? He seems like he's got the physical tools. He's got the, something developing in his game. Barnett, it just seems like,
Yeah, but Hester's almost guaranteed to fucking obliterate Mark Munoz.
Well,
like, just blow his head off.
I know, but Barnett will too. That's the problem.
See, I don't know that Barnett will. Like, he's certainly not going to throw the kind of bombs that Hester would have thrown. And I agree with you, Zane. Barnett has had this bizarre slide into mediocrity from a guy who was a pretty good-looking prospect from his start on The Ultimate Fighter, and in his first UFC fight, you're like, yeah, this guy's pretty solid. It's like
Where's Barnett training? Who's doing this to this?
Tsunami Jim, Sherdog says, but I thought he was at
It's
Alliance.
that's doing this, and they're trying to give him that jangly, hyperactive Alliance kickboxing style from the outside.
Exactly. They're like, you're British, you're going to be Michael Bisping now. And I'm like, well, he used to be better when he would like come forward and throw combinations and long kicks and stuff. But like Eric Del Fiero just cannot have somebody who is long-limbed without just saying like, oh, you're lengthy, you're going to fight at range. And that's not Barnett's bag. Like, just because you're taller than the other guy does not mean you need to be keeping him away from you. Like, look at Phil Davis. Long limbs, desperately wants to get on the inside to wrestle, but has no bridge with his striking to get there. So he's just lost. And that's where Barnett's been, too. He's just like...
Yep.
Barnett to me should be modeling himself on Semi Schilt as far as kickboxing.
He's
like,
totally.
Be a killer Stork. Get in there, get in the knees, the elbows, the clinch.
Yeah, or even more like, like if I'm comparing to like boxers, like Alexis Arguello was really tall, but Alexis Arguello wasn't like committed to outboxing you. He would also like step in and do some dirty work. Or like Antonio Margarito. You can be tall and long-limbed and still get in and mix it up. And it suits Barnett's attributes better. Like, he's actually pretty slow too. Like, so I don't understand why Del Fiero wants to have him trying to dance around on the outside and like pick off punches and then just lose boring decisions. He's I don't know, man. He's a better fighter than that, and he's like being conned into this really, really ineffective game plan. And I've been more and more annoyed with guys who go to Alliance and have this happen to them recently. Like, it happened to Michael Chandler, it happened to Phil Davis, all these guys who are really talented fighters, and then it's just like, okay, so now they're just slowly winning or losing decisions without any...
But hey, they're getting investment advice from Lloyd Irvin. So you're picking Mark Munoz, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yep. No, I mean, granted, Barnett's going to win. Mark Munoz has nothing left, but... Like, I don't know that it'll actually be like a sudden crazy knockout, because I don't think Barnett really knows how to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's why I'm not excited for this fight.
That's what, this fight is sad for both fighters. Like, I thought Barnett had potential coming in, and Munoz is chinnier than ever, so it's just like there's no positive aspect to this matchup.
Yeah, it's a drag. I mean, Munoz is just here because he's of Filipino descent, and they wanted somebody of Filipino descent
to lose. I don't.
Well, close to that. I mean, they're just trying to fill slots. This is the best.
I think the big thing was that they've been trying to put this card together forever in the
7
Philippines.
years.
And Mark Munoz was gonna headline it for a long time, and he
After
probably
Brandon
really
Barrett
wanted.
collapsed, yes.
Yeah, he was probably wanted to be on it, and at this point they're just like, okay, like we'll get you on the card. That's where they are with Mark Munoz, and that's sort of like his last hurrah.
Yeah, and he's all they got because Nova didn't develop, Mark Edeba doesn't show any signs of developing, and here we are. I mean, it is what it is. But the odds makers, they like Barnett, but not a ton. They've got him favored minus 155 all the way up to minus 175. Munoz is the underdog, plus 135, 130 all the way up to plus 143. And that brings us to the co-main event, Casas Philippou against Gegard Mousasi, in what should be just a vicious beating, and well-deserved for anybody who remembers what Philippou did to Tim Boach with the eye poking and breaking his hand on his head, which probably isn't Philippou's fault. But Andy quit the Cerro Longo gym, so anyway. Connor, you want to go first?
Yeah, this is a fun fight. I like this. I'm interested in it. I think I guess that's not what we do on this show, but sometimes it just turns into a care don't care episode. I think Mousasi should win this, but it's been kind of hard to get a handle on where Mousasi's at recently. I don't just think it's like level of competition. I think Mousasi has been weirdly inconsistent in some of his performances. I mean, granted, Jacare, Machida, two very tough fighters, but both guys, they either exposed a flaw that's really always been there for Mousasi or something.
Do we know if Mousasi trains in a cage?
I don't know.
I think he does.
Because he's got all the hallmarks of a guy who excelled under Pride rules and has struggled in the UFC, and I really...
Or lost in the cage, he was used to the ring.
Yeah, yeah.
Cop.
Yeah, the Crow Cop story. And he lays on his back for a long time. He's not thinking about getting up. He's not thinking about cage walking. Anyway, back to back.
Give Gegard Mousasi a 10-minute first round, and he'll be UFC middleweight champion. um, yeah, this is an interesting fight, man. Philippou looked really sharp in his last fight with Lorenz Larkin. He looked really good. He was really accurate with his punches. Defense was okay. He stuck in there, and Larkin looked good in that fight too. That's the thing. Larkin really had improved his angular movement and his combination punching. He was throwing volume. He was sticking around. He wasn't just trying to get out of there and be chased down and play the elusive role. And so, Philippou did it really well against a good Lorenz Larkin. Mousasi. The performance against Dan Henderson is meaningless to me. It really means nothing at this point. Dan Henderson's just way too
How would
well
you handicap Dan Henderson versus Mark Munoz at this point
with
in
a
time?
wheelchair?
They should have done
Who
that
gets the
fight.
cane? I think it's which guy grabs the cane first.
Honestly, they should have done that fight. Munoz would have had a better chance of beating Henderson than Luke Barnett. Henderson's got the big punch, but he's also, he could get taken down. God damn, these are hard. The fights on this card that are good are pretty damn good. They're hard to pick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Mousasi because I think that Philippou still really needs that big punch to win, and Mousasi has always been iron-chinned. It's taken a lot of punishment to really hurt him, and he recovers very well even when he's hurt. Obviously, at some point, that's got to go away. He's had a very long career, but he's dominated most of that career, hasn't had to take a lot of shots. He's just been able to take them when he's had to. He's like Floyd Mayweather, right? Mayweather rarely gets hit, but when he does, you're like, okay, he's got a chin. Yeah, I think Mousasi will be able to outbox Philippou, and I actually think we may see Mousasi going for some takedowns and trying to work his ground game as well, trying to use some of those.
Don't you think the kickboxing aspect is going to be Mousasi's ace in the hole?
Yeah, Mousasi's not like an incredible kicker, though. He's good, but Philippou is not a bad kicker either. I think they're kind of matched in that aspect. I really think it's the movement and the jab of Mousasi that will make him, that gives him a stylistic advantage against Philippou. Yeah, I'm going to go with Mousasi by decision.
All right, and Zane, do you think the eye pokes are going to be a factor for Philippou?
Oh, they could be. That's always a factor for Philippou. But he has that paw. He does paw constantly. Like he's a relentless pawer. But I think this is one of those things where, like, unfortunately, Philippou of like 3 or 4 years ago when he was at Serra-Longo, I might give him a good chance to take this fight because I think he'd look to mix in some takedowns. He would, work a lot of different angles and really come prepared for Mousasi. Since then, like, his boxing is still really sharp, but the rest of his game just doesn't really seem to be anywhere. Like he's as good a boxer as ever, but he's either gonna win by the sword or die by the sword. And Mousasi is the kind of guy that, Machida was able to outwork him, but that was very much, like that was Machida can do things that.
Well, also function Machida controlling range and distance. And Philippou's looking to get in a combination range, which, if you're in combination range, you're in range.
Well, but I mean, more than that, like, Machida just has more defensive skill. He has a lot more different parts to his game to offer.
He can phase shift from in close to a clinch really well.
Yeah, and Philippou, if he can't really, like, dirty box Mousasi up or land some big bombs from the outside, his win over Larkin was nice, but Larkin has this very big problem that Mousasi doesn't have, which is that he can't be an offensive and defensive fighter at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Larkin's either landing hard shots and taking hard shots, or he's just covering up and not throwing anything. And that was Larkin. Larkin was really trying to press the action in that fight, and he just got, he got hit because he was trying to throw bombs. So I don't think that. I don't know. I think Mousasi can control the range. He can control the jab. He can keep Philippou working, and he can probably keep him working to the point that Philippou starts to wear down and slow down a little, and then it'll be a real problem. So I got to take Mousasi by a decision.
All right, the odds makers, they like them some Mousasi, and I think this might be a bit much. They've got him favored anywhere from minus 550 all the way up to minus 675.
Yeah.
And Philippou is an underdog to the tune of plus 400 all the way up to plus 525. And I'm picking Mousasi all the way. I think he's likely to submit him in the third round after a beating, but I don't feel like this is a minus 675 fight.
I will say to that accord, the thing that sticks out to me here is that Philippou should just be entering the prime of his career. Like, the best years of Philippou's career are ahead of him. Mousasi, at some point, anytime, something's just going to start breaking. And we don't know what it'll be, when it'll be, but he's at the point where it's all borrowed time. So that's the kind of thing that does give me some pause.
Interesting. All right, and let's move to the main event. Frankie Edgar, Uriah Faber. Faber returning to the featherweight division that he once ruled long before it was a UFC division back in the WEC days. Zane, talk about this first and use the word process. You haven't said it all episode. Last week it was process. This week I haven't heard it one time.
There are a lot of fighters on this card with a good process. I mean, that's why I'm not using it so much, is that, Cajun Johnson and maybe Nolan Tickman are the fighters on the card that don't really, and Hungyu Lim are the fighters on the card that don't have a great process. Everybody else is pretty...
The segue was supposed to be you're talking about Uriah Faber's process or lack thereof. Like, how does Faber have a path to victory in this fight? That's my question. What's his process for beating Frankie Edgar?
I actually think
where I was setting you up to talk about Faber and use the word process.
That doesn't make any sense to me. That's a non sequitur for me in terms of Faber and process. I mean, Faber's a very good wrestle boxer, and he's, I don't know, Faber's game is very tight. He wrestles, he boxes, he boxes, and he forces you to box with his wrestling, and then he takes you down if he has to, and he out-grapples you and scrambles. I mean, that's what Faber does, and I just don't think...
But there's no way he can do any of that to Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, I think what we've seen recently out of Uriah Faber, especially against that Francisco Rivera fight, where it just looked like he was losing every minute of it until
the eye poke.
Yeah, I think Frankie...
Did anybody see Chuck Liddell in the crowd when that fight happened? He was like going like that. Anyway.
But I just think that Faber, like we were talking about with Mousasi and borrowed time, Faber's also another guy who's been on borrowed time for a while now. I mean, he's been fighting for 12 years, and sooner or later, you're going to see the cracks, and I think that we're seeing them now. And Frankie Edgar's just the kind of guy who we're not seeing those cracks yet. Frankie Edgar, in fact, has done what Faber has failed to do, which is that he's really adjusted his game to be more dominant without being physically reliant. And I think he's just going to work Faber over. And I don't know. Can he finish it? I don't know. Faber's tough as nails. And he especially is tough in, like, he still has the scrambling. That's like the part of his game that has not gone away yet. So I don't think that Edgar's going to finish the fight, but I think he'll be dominant.
I can't remember a fight where Frankie Edgar's been caught in scrambles since the Tyson Griffin fight way back.
I'm not saying he's going to be caught in scrambles. I'm going to say he's going to not be able to hold Faber down and submit him or knock him out because Faber's still so good at scrambling.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say he was going to get caught with submission. I just meant that, that we haven't seen him scramble with somebody who's quick and dangerous like Faber is still on the ground. And so I'm curious to see that. But otherwise, I just don't see... Faber against Dominic Cruz, he would land the odd pot shot. I don't see him doing that to Frankie Edgar at all. Connor, what's your take?
I think I see this one as a little closer than you guys, and certainly closer than, I don't know what the final odds are, Nate, but I've seen glimpses of them, and they're pretty wide for Edgar last I checked. So I think this is actually a pretty competitive fight. The weird thing is I think Faber is going to look like the bigger man despite having come up a division to fight Edgar, because Frankie Edgar could still conceivably make bantamweight. I don't think he really cuts much weight. Not that I think I'm happy with him being at lightweight or featherweight. I think I don't like guys who cut an insane amount of weight. But okay, here's a couple questions that keep hitting me. Who has Edgar faced that is like Uriah Faber? that proves that he can easily beat a man with this style, and even the older version of Uriah Faber. Edgar is not Francisco Rivera. He's not going to hang around in the pocket and land punches. He's going to be in and out, off to the sides. Those angles are very dangerous in their own regard, but they're also really dangerous in combination with the boxing. Anytime that Frankie Edgar was stuck boxing with Cub Swanson without the threat of the wrestling, he looked just as hittable as ever, because Frankie Edgar's defense is not great. People like to sell him as some kind of insane slick boxer with incredible footwork, but the truth is he puts himself in risky positions a lot. He gives his opponents angles while looking for angles of his own. Like he really likes this soft right hand thing where he'll jump off to the left and square himself up throwing a right hand, and he's gotten hurt doing that several times, by Gray Maynard most notably. So, there's a question there. He hasn't fought somebody who is as strong as
Faber. Mostly
Faber.
uppercuts Maynard was catching him with, though.
Maynard caught him with uppercuts, and he caught him, which Faber's shown a pretty decent uppercut since the time with Dwayne Ludwig. He also caught him with left hooks, I think. Which, obviously, Faber's big is the overhand right, so it's, but just, I'm not trying to be, too specifically tactical. I'm just saying, has Frankie Edgar faced and easily beaten someone who is very strong, still very explosive, if less quick on his feet than he used to be, and a really good scrambler, with respectable pop in his punches. And I think Faber throws more volume now than he used to, because I think he kind of has to, because he can't move around the way he used to.
What do you think of the parallels between Frankie Edgar and somebody like Jose Aldo or Dominic Cruz, like guys who stayed on the outside and just frustrated the bejesus out of Uriah Faber? I mean, in Aldo's case, he was chopping him down with leg kicks, which I don't see Edgar doing, but it seems like Uriah gets really frustrated with guys that stay outside of his range, make him miss now and then, and tire him out. I mean, you don't see Edgar doing that?
There's some of that, but the thing is, for Edgar to do that, it always has relied on him establishing the wrestling threat. I don't doubt that he'll be able to take Faber down. I think he'll probably actually surprise people, Faber included, with how easily he takes him down, because his timing and deception on those takedowns is great. The knee tap that Frankie Edgar hits, he's got a great single leg, he's got a great double. His wrestling and his chain wrestling are phenomenal. But Frankie Edgar is not... He's not an outboxer unless he can hit those takedowns on you. And even the failed takedowns, you have to
But you just said he could hit the takedowns.
I was just saying, even the failed ones, you have to be thinking about the takedowns to be confounded by his striking in that way. Unless you're BJ Penn, I guess, and you're just going to stand there and look at him. It's a tough one, man. I do think Frankie Edgar will win. But, to me, I can very clearly see in my head Uriah Faber catching Frankie Edgar in a guillotine or something in a scramble. I don't think that that's at all a distant, far-flung idea, because Frankie Edgar, is a good submission grappler, but he hasn't fought somebody who scrambles like Uriah Faber. And who's that, Zane? Zane's scowling at me.
He fought Ben Henderson.
He lost to Ben Henderson.
He barely, by a hair's breadth.
He lost clearly to Ben Henderson the first time. The second time, he fought a Ben Henderson who did not fight anything like the way Uriah Faber fights now.
And Charles Oliveira is a great scrambler.
Not of the Uriah Faber ilk.
Yeah, Oliveira's a scrambler off his back. He's not a front headlock scrambler.
No, but I'm just saying that he's fought guys who scramble well on the ground. He's fought guys and worked with guys that are dangerous there. It's not like Uriah Faber's just this out of left field amazing grappler, the likes of which Frankie Edgar has never seen before.
Sure. But we're on this, a couple of months ago, probably last year, I was like, oh, guys, I think we're going to see Uriah Faber lose. For example, I picked Faber to lose to Rafael Assunção. Mm-hmm. I thought Assunção would beat him. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's just they're going to waste a contender. I'm like, actually, it'll be a big win for the contender. But I think now we may have gone too far in the other direction after the Francisco Rivera fight, and we're thinking of Uriah Faber like some kind of joke. Uriah Faber has pound for pound one of the best records in MMA.
Yeah.
History. I mean, he's got an incredible record. He has beaten a who's who, and he's fought, even the ones he's lost, he's fought competitively to a who's who of featherweight and bantamweight MMA. I just think he's a tough matchup. I think he's a tough matchup for absolutely anybody, and I think he's picked up some serious veteran craftiness in his time to make up for the fact that he has lost a little bit of speed. And I don't think he's really lost punching power. He starched Michael McDonald just a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and looked great in that fight. And Michael McDonald is a good striker and not a guy who a win over him should be taken lightly. So I have to pick Frankie Edgar. He's got more momentum. I think, like Zane said, I do think he is kind of even coming into his own now. I think he's actually putting things together better than he used to, whereas Faber is on the decline. But I think that Faber is definitely he deserves the credit to say that, yeah, he could pull out a win in this fight. He's not likely to start winning rounds and banking rounds, but he's a finisher. He's dangerous, and he is a unique opponent for Frankie Edgar. Basically the question of, has Frankie Edgar fought somebody like Uriah Faber? The answer has to be no, because Uriah Faber is a very unique fighter. So it's a different style matchup than he's faced before. I like Edgar, but I think Faber's got a chance.
Okay, let's posit that Faber does pull it off. Was it 5 minutes before he's booked in a featherweight title fight, or 10?
A featherweight title fight? Boy, I'd sure love to see him getting blasted by Jose Aldo again.
Yeah, I don't see that happening, but I do. I mean, they just love some Uriah Faber. He's a draw. He's, has carried these divisions for a long, long time. They love to book him in fights, especially if Conor McGregor wins against Jose Aldo. I could just see them throwing Faber to the wolves once again. But
if Faber wins, I'd love to see them put Faber as I don't know. When's Dominic Cruz coming back?
Man, I'm not. I stopped believing in Santa Claus a long time ago. I'm
just saying, if he does come back, I wouldn't mind seeing that fight again.
Everybody wants to see that fight. And it'd be a great tune-up fight for Cruz, I think.
Yeah, it'd be a nice legacy fight. If Faber wins, that could be finish your career. That's a great way to finish it off. And if he doesn't, which if Cruz comes back looking like he did in his last return, he won't. Then
Yeah, I mean, they could book that fight, win or lose, though. I mean, they've always overbooked Uriah Faber, and I think if he gets a win here, which I mean, not that it would be a lucky win, but it would be a lucky win. I mean,
how about Faber versus Mighty Mouse at bantamweight if he wins?
At bantamweight. Well, maybe they could get. I mean, that would be a desperate attempt to rub some shine on Mighty Mouse, but
I think it would work. I think Mighty Mouse would have a shot. I would love to see that fight.
That would be a fun fight, but I just think they'll throw him to the wolves against Aldo or McGregor again if they at all can.
Yeah, if Faber's at all smart, and he seems to be pretty smart with his career, it's like Faber's one of the smarter fighters about managing who he fights and when. I wouldn't be taking title fights anymore. I would, he can
but
get.
But the paydays on title fights, especially against McGregor, that's going to be the biggest payday of his career.
McGregor might be worth it. McGregor might be worth it because he can bring you a lot of money on a pay-per-view. Yeah. But otherwise, Faber's here headlining a card. He's getting headline slots still. He's getting big fights. Mm-hmm. He can ride off into the sunset on big card headlining fights on his name without having to be getting beat for 5 rounds by Jose Aldo.
He'd be better off taking Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz kind of fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I just think it's the McGregor fight would be irresistible for Faber.
Well, yeah, the McGregor fight is irresistible to anyone with any sense in that division. Even if you take a beating, which he would, it would be, you make more money in that fight than you would for 3 others.
Yeah. So, anyway, everybody's picking Frankie Edgar, but we think Faber has a chance. The odds makers, though, they've got Edgar heavily favored, minus 400 all the way up to minus 470. And Uriah Faber, the underdog, at plus 280 all the way up to plus 373. And again, our odds partner is oddshark.com, although I'm getting some of these odds from bestfightodds.com. So, subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. Follow us on Twitter at TheZaneSimon, at BoxingBush, BUSCH, and at KidNate, although I rarely tweet. Read us on BloodyElbow.com. Yeah, but whatever. I don't know. The odds thing, I just had to put it. I'm an honest guy. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
My Twitter. I rarely tweet. We're sponsored by such and such. I'm using this. It's just like these little subtextual things just keep creeping into your speech.
Do we have any bets to make on this card before we leave it?
Oh, I got a couple.
Okay.
Tell us about him, Connor.
Nam, Yuichul Nam at minus 165 isn't terrible. I thought about Lim at plus 109, but I really just don't think that's a betting fight. I think it's way too hard to call Lim versus Magny, which is what makes it such a damn interesting bat.
Man, that is a bet your grandmother's Cadillac fight if I've ever seen one. She's not going to miss the title. She won't even notice. When was the last time she drove the thing? And think how your hands will sweat the whole fight.
Yeah, I really want those sweaty palms. I just want to be dripping into the legs of my pants while I'm watching the fight.
If I'm not vomiting from stress from a fight, why am I gambling?
I think Barnett at -155 is a doable bet. I do not see a way he could possibly lose that fight, even if it may be
Famous
like.
last words, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and then it's a toss-up on a chance underdog bet between Faber and Philippou. You can kind of just take your personal preference as to which you think. Philippou has the more tempting odds. Faber's odds are +315 though, and that's Uriah Faber. I think both odds are wider than they really should be. They both definitely have a bit of value on the bout. So not a big bet, but if you put like $5 to win, what would you win there? 15 on Faber?
Yeah.
A little over that, yeah. And you said 5 units. Then people are thinking, wow, Connor's peeling off the.
I want to speak in small dollar sums because of the last time we did a show and a guy was like, I bet $600 on your bets and lost it all. I'm like, well.
Well, you're a dumbass, sir. I can't help you.
I barely have $600, so I certainly wouldn't recommend
Didn't
that.
you hear Kid Nate say gambling was a venal sin and you shouldn't do it?
I honestly think Philippou's the better bet there, just because of the whole the career arc and timing thing, where Philippou, he really is a fighter who should be entering the prime of his career. We should be.
Except he's training with a subpar camp and regressing. So.
Yeah, it's not that bad of a camp. I don't think the camp is. Who else trains?
Yeah, it's fine. The belt.
It's not Serra-Longo though. I mean.
No, but Serra-Longo's its own weird thing. That they have a very close knit small camp. So,
Yeah, anybody who's taken the subway too far into Long Island will know what Zane's talking about. So, is that our show? Have we plugged everything? And all right.
There are no other bets to take. The rest of the undercard is
dead even on really close ugly fights.
Yeah, we'd have to have a bath salt sponsor for me to be recommending that you bet on these things.
And then you'd have to subversively mention that you're actually using meth.
Edgar vs. Faber is sponsored by Four Loko. I'll be drinking.
I'll wait till we turn off and then between you guys, I'll be like, only our viewers would use bath salt.
Bath salt in this pipe.
Let's stick to the meth I made in my coffee pot in the motel room I'm living in. All right, enough sordid Americana. So, adios, MMA aficionados. We'll see you next time. Zane, will you be back for the 6th round in the mid-afternoon?
I think I will. I'm actually thinking I might be up in the morning to live tweet this son of a bitch, and I can't believe I'm thinking about doing that.
Well,
I may be around too, actually.
Hey, maybe we could have a 3-way. This could be some 1 p.m. fun. I'm feeling like this could be
afternoon delight.
It won't be afternoon delight, Connor. Someday you'll know what afternoon delight is, and it's much more delightful than.
It's only because you said 3-way that I had to say that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna let that go. MMA aficionados, adios, MMA aficionados. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, guys.